I've been a little frustrated lately with my antique forged anvils, not because they're not cool or well made, but because the attributes that I've been desiring in an anvil have changed slightly over the years. Let me tell you some of the things that I'm looking for in the perfect anvil. I want a 1-inch hardy hole, an actual 1-inch hardy hole, not one that tapers or that's a little weird size like all of the forged anvils I've ever seen, where you can't actually fit a 1-inch shanked hardy tool in them. It's either wobbly or it won't fit at all. I want a hardy hole that's on the left side when the horn is on the right side, and I want it close to the body so it's very well supported, so the heel isn't going to break off, and so there's lots of support and return energy when you strike with the hammer on a hardy tool. I want 90-degree edges, and I'm not talking about the sharpness of the edge, but rather across the length of the face and the body. I want it to maintain a square, flat angle, or with flat sides rather. And being a tool maker, that's become an important thing where I need to use the anvil as a reference. The antique forged anvils that I have are all either rhombused slightly, or like my Buckworth that I really like in all of its other attributes, it is convex, and so it changes the angle towards the top of the face, which is useless if I'm trying to do something like make hammer tongs where you're making something to the golden ratio with accurate measurements and accurate bends. That's just not useful. I want a proper conical horn, and aesthetics wise, I really like the feet of the Italian and the French anvils. The Nimba anvils that are made brand new have some of those really great attributes, but I didn't know if I should spend all that money on a brand new anvil, not knowing if this really is the ultimate. So I came up with another solution. Let me tell you about that. It's this right here. This is an Acciaio anvil. Acciaio is Italian for steel. The 50 here probably means 50 kilograms. This is about a 110-pound anvil. And these are cast 1045 in China, and they've come out in the last few years, and actually Princess Auto sells them. You can also get them on Kijiji, and they used to be cheap. Now they're getting to be expensive. Princess Auto sells this model brand new for $450. The quality is all over the place. Some of these anvils aren't even hardened. Some of them have Bondo on them. Some of them have welds that are in places where you don't want welds to be. This anvil, though, I bought used from a fellow for $150. It does have welds on it, but they're underneath, so they're kind of inconsequential. The face and the top of the horn seem in really good shape, though. So the attributes that this anvil really gets right is that the hardy hole is good and it's in the right place. I haven't measured it yet to know if it's exactly 1 inch, and if it's not, I'll do whatever it takes to get it proper. But it's really nice and well supported. I love the square horn. The face is a little wide for me, but I'm just gonna compromise on that point. I'd rather it be like 3.5 inches wide. It's 5, so it's pretty wide. Basically, the only real negative attribute is that the horn looks like that. It's not proper and round. It looks like one of the masks that those communist enforcers would wear during the COVID times up here in Canada. So I definitely don't want it to look like that. So I'm gonna have to grind that round. The pritchel hole here is in the horn by the step in a weird place, which is just useless. I don't think there's any recovery from that without some welding, and I just don't think it's worth it. These are modeled after antique Italian anvils, and the pritchel hole was there originally, and they're this big too, but the face on the old anvils was in plane with the top of the horn, and the top of the horn near the back was flat. And so that location was actually usable on those old anvils. It has those 90-degree edges that I was talking about, which I'm excited about. The logo, though, here sticks out and obviously prevents there from being a flat surface, and this is the side that I'm gonna be banging on the most, so that'll have to get ground off. Otherwise, though, this is a really good option. It has a hardened face. This one does anyways. If I tap it here, you can see, or you can hear rather, it rings like a bell. This is my truck hammer, so it's not very good, but you can hear when the hammer's just a little bit off the top of the face that it bounces right down to nothing, which indicates a good hardness level. I'm excited about it. I'm gonna modify it. I'm gonna tell you what I think. And I'm gonna try and make my dream anvil, or as close as I can get to it, with this $110 Chinese Acciaio anvil. Well, doesn't that look snazzy? What did we do here? Well, I started grinding on the side of the horn, and I figured that that would take me till the cows come home. So I just got the cutting torch and turned the pressure way up and just cut it roughly to the right shape. So at least we're getting somewhere with that. The tip of the horn was also bent down just a little bit, so I heated that up to red hot and hit underneath and straighten that out. So that's good. Now I just got to get grinding. That also gave a great opportunity to preheat the anvil so that I can weld up that area that was cracked and ground down and weld up the crack over the hardy hole. Here's what it looks like post-weld. There was a bad set of cracks and a rounded edge on this side, and the hardy hole had a chip out of it. Here it is after about 3 odd hours of working on it. This is a Buckworth anvil. And even though it has other flaws, it's super nice, and the horn specifically is the best proportioned and tapered horn I've ever used. And you can see that I tried to make them match as close as possible. They don't perfectly, but I'm gonna try it and see how the function is. The rest of it's pretty good. I had to weld up a corner there, but the chamfers are ground, the face is flattened. The hardy hole didn't need enlarging at all, actually, just a heavy chamfer put around the edge, which is important if you're using hardy tools in the anvil, because you do not want them to get hung up and press against the very corner. You notice that when I got this anvil, there was a chip here, probably caused by a hardy tool that was putting force on the sharp corners, and of course it would chip a corner, but you also want it so that the hardy tools don't get stuck really bad. Chamfer is necessary on an anvil like this. On the striking anvil over here, you want a sharp corner on the hardy hole because you're going to be forging these tools and you want a clean shoulder in here. However, on an anvil where you're going to be using the tools, you need the chamfer. There's also the radius edge here on the square horn, or the tapered heel. You can hear how it really bounces very fast down to nothing again. So we've maintained the hardness. Well, you can see I went a little bit too far there with the torch, but that's okay. So we have it on a 3-legged stand here made out of 2 7/8 drill pipe or oil-filled pipe. It's on a 1-inch base plate. I would have made it a little bit bigger, but I had a scrap piece exactly this size laying around and I wanted to use it. The finishing touch on the anvil here was I stamped Hardy Locomotive Works into it, so it is a genuine artifact now. You can see I have radius part of the edge, left part of it sharp. Radius the inside of the hardy hole, we already talked about that. The mounting system is that I welded it right to the plate. I wanted a mounting system that would leave the aesthetics of the anvil reasonably untouched. And again, this is a cheap cast steel anvil, and I just thought I would try welding it. And we'll see how it holds up. It's obviously very, very solidly mounted to the base. Usually I have hammer racks sitting around my anvil, but I tried to do something a little different this time, inspired by seeing a swivel tray that some farriers had on their anvil stands. I put that on, and it swivels. It seems to hold tools quite nicely. When the tray is in this orientation, it really makes it handy to grab tools and get my work done. It's a good spot for putting punches and such. Check out these neat tongs that Mark Ling gave me. He has stamped to Ethan on them. Mark makes great tongs, and he just nails these V-bit tongs. They are structurally sound, light, easy to use, grip the material well. Go check him out, among other people, if you want nice tongs. And of course it swivels around. Let's say I'm working on the horn. I'd want my tools maybe accessible more like this. I made it fairly heavy so that it should hold up to a little bit of abuse. So is this my ideal setup? Not necessarily. Obviously it's pretty light and it could be more aesthetically pleasing and all of that. And it's very different than anything I've ever tried before and used. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing how it functions. If it's not wonderful, I don't have a whole lot invested in it other than quite a bit of time actually. But if it is nice, boy, it'll be nice to have a tapered, heeled anvil in the shop with this little swivel stand on it. I'm looking forward to trying it out. We'll, of course, do some forging before the end of the video. That's the most important part of it all. But in all, as I look at it right now, not having done any work on it, I think it looks good. I'm happy with it, and I'm looking forward to firing up the forge now. Number one, let's just talk about the stand. If I were to do it again, I would make those legs come out at a much wider angle. It's rather stable if you're hammering straight up and down on it, but if you go to hammer on the side, it wobbles more than I would like it to. Instead of having 3 sides, I put 4 sides on this. Makes it way better. I was just having stuff fall off all the time. Welding the anvil to the stand has worked out perfectly fine. I have no opposition to it at all on an anvil that doesn't have much sentimental value like this. I wasn't quite happy with the finish on the horn, so I've sat down and draw filed it a couple of times and just made it a little nicer. But after all that work, I really do like the shape of the horn. It's just about perfect. The hardy hole has served me well being the right size. I've also really enjoyed the fact that because it has this slot here where the hardy hole comes through the casting, when I punch a drift through, it stays there like a little cup, and I can just pick it up with a pair of tongs instead of it falling on the ground. So that has been a really handy feature as well. As far as the hardness and how the face of the anvil is held up, it's not actually super great. You can see there a crack in the corner and the remnants of a few dents and mishits. It's definitely harder than mild steel, but it actually isn't quite as hard as I thought it was when we first finished it. You'll notice here the big dent from before I got it is still there. I really wish it wasn't there because it is in the way, but someday I might fix that. Now, even though the anvil is a little bit softer than I would like, I'm actually not too worried about it. As long as it's easy to repair, that's more important to me. I've really enjoyed having a flat anvil and an anvil with 90-degree corners and all of that. The square horn has also been super handy. I've used it for a number of things, even on a riveting project where it was the perfect shape for a number of the tight spaces I had to get into. If I wasn't so scared, I would probably radius the whole square horn quite a bit. And that's because one of the major uses for this is to straighten out a curve. And so the rounder those edges are, the less deep the marks will be in the piece that you're trying to adjust. So this project was a success. I'm pleased with the anvil. I think I'll use it for a long time. I really enjoy the shape of it. And there's not many anvils that I think could actually surpass this for the usability of it. I know that may seem like an extreme statement because there are very expensive anvils out there. But this one, other than the softness of it, which, as I said, doesn't really matter to me as much, really seems to fit all of the criteria that I've been looking for. So on that wonderful note, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.